The First Book of Moses, Bereshayath, Chapter 1, First Creation by Elohim. In the former time periods, as a powerful sign of working, chief son and heir Elohim filled with choice things, behold, as a sign Shemayim, the place of the names, and behold, as a sign Aratz, the chief place of running. But observe how Aratz was unorganized and empty, and Sheshach rose up from the deep waters, went up to its face, but the Ruach Elohim, as a wall of protection, moved violently upon the surface of the waters. Elohim then declared, light he will exist, and light he will exist. And Elohim gazed upon that beautiful light, and Elohim made distinctive the light from the darkness. And to the light Elohim called out the name Ya'um, and to the darkness he called out the name Leah Laha. This was the close and the dawn of the first age.
The Ketub Abarayath, or the Paleo-Hebrew, is a language over 5,000 years old. It chronicles a story branching forth from ancient time. His story, Yahweh. Walk into his story. Read the Paleo-Hebrew scriptures.
Well, it's finally happening. I've cracked. I just couldn't take it anymore. We finally arrived to this point. We're talking about the reptilians, one of the probably most hated conspiracies in the world. I mean, this is just to the point that it's, a running joke, right? You talk about the reptilian overlords, and maybe it's someday I just need to make a video going through my mailbag and just showing you, some of the things. I want to be polite to everybody. That's one of the reasons I don't do it. But I do get letters from time to time from some angry viewers. And why are they angry? They're angry that I have never formally talked about the reptilians. In fact, I got one recently where somebody wrote me, said, that I looked through your entire catalog and it was super suspect that you've never talked about the reptilians. So now I've kind of given it away, I guess, because I told them, I'm like, it's in my stack. I got like a big stack here. It's in there and I'm going to get to it. There's other things I haven't gotten to either. You can't get to it all in one lifetime. It's impossible. It really is. There's just too much out there. But now I guess now it's suspicious that I'm talking about it because I guess I'm like covering some tracks or something. But without, shooting myself in the foot or sticking my foot in my mouth anymore, let's just get into it. Now, I will say that the subject matter tonight is some of it's a little dark. I mean, we're talking about like this isn't cartoons, people. I know I put a slee stack on the cover there. But this isn't cartoons. We're dealing with these, reptilian overlords. I'm going to be reading you some of the accounts and just, discretion in your household with little ears if they can handle this or not. And I do want to say, too, that for those of you who are familiar with my school of research, what I like to do is I like to get as many different texts that I can, 20, 30, however many I can on a certain subject matter, and just read them to you and say, okay, this is not me saying this is what all these people have stated. They're in agreement mostly. Sometimes they're not. And whether or not this is true, these people historically believed it was true. So what I did was I got this whole presentation together on scriptural passages talking about seraphim angels. And then what started happening was I started taking these kind of contemporary and other texts and putting them in as a prologue. And pretty soon that became the entire presentation. So this is going to be a little unusual tonight, that I'm not going to have much scripture in here to give to you. You're going to have to wait around next week, but I'm setting everything up tonight. So without further ado, let's get right into this. Now, a few months ago, I gave a presentation on St. George. I was really interested in the idea of St. George fighting the dragon. And well, let me just say this. Hold on, I need another drink of coffee. I'm not like oiled up and ready to go yet, unfortunately. But it's too late. We're already live. There's no turning back now. One of the things when you get into reptilian conspiracy, when you kind of look at the history of it, there are those who will claim that it was actually invented in the 20th century. Some people will say that it goes back as far as the late 19th century under Madame Blavatsky, and that she invented the whole reptilian thing coming out of Lemuria and all that. But what I want to show you actually is that just starting out, and next week we're going to go into the Bible, but just starting out, that's actually not true. That this idea that there are reptilian dragon people, and that's what Blavatsky called them, the dragon men. The idea that these dragon men inhabit the rulers of the earth actually goes back to early Christianity. This is in the opening centuries of Christianity. By the 3rd or 4th century, at least, we have on the official timeline, we have examples of St. George slaying a dragon with a man skin over him. If that confuses you, you'll see in a second. But another thing is that when I gave this presentation a few months ago on St. George, I was specifically connecting him with Elijah. And I was making the claim based on a lot of different texts. I recommend looking at that presentation if you haven't. Please do. For me, it's a pretty good case that St. George was Elijah. Elijah was promised to come, and he came. But the thing that really I couldn't really figure out at the time was where Enoch went, because I was showing you passages where Enoch and Elijah were to come. And I'm like, okay, well, here's Elijah, where's Enoch, right? So one of my listeners, one of my viewers, she contacted me and showed me that there were two of them actually. I'm jumping ahead of myself here. Let me just show you some of this here. Classic artwork all over Europe. St. George slaying the dragon. I mean, this is huge. This was in the Middle Ages, in the early and late Middle Ages. St. George was everywhere. They gave this guy a lot of praise. Big deal for someone who was just made up, right? Just out of a fairy tale. This one here at the very bottom, I know I scrolled through those really fast. This is something I actually got to see at the Smithsonian. The lady's head is removed and his arm and spear is removed, but that was pretty cool to see. So this is what I want to show you here. I'm going to jump ahead for you guys here. There's a guy named Saint Theodore. I did not know about this guy, but apparently Saint Theodore and Saint George were buddies, and they went around slaying dragons together. And we have artwork all over in different churches and kind of Byzantine type churches where you see these two dudes coming together with their big old lances and they're spearing dragons. This is we see it as early, I think this depiction here is in the 17th century, which is the 7th century, which is pretty early. So we might have our Enoch character there, worth mentioning. All right. And just in review, this is, of course, you're looking at not St. George here or Elijah, but Phinehas. And, of course, Phinehas is probably Elijah as well. The guy was around a long time. Elijah the Tishbite. We see that he was promised to come and slay the Antichrist and all that kind of stuff. So, all right. Here's some things for review going into this. These are selections from the Martyrdom of St. George. And I just published this week. When I gave that presentation a few months ago, I said I was working on it. I just finished it just in time, hot off the press. So you guys can come by our store and pick up The Martyrdom of St. George. It's a bit of a shocker. You're going to get some real culture shock in there, the way early Christians just viewed the world around them, and martyrdom and all that kind of stuff. It's worth reading regardless. And in this case, you have this guy named Dadianus, and he's basically the Antichrist. He's got the 4 quarters of the earth under his control. He's got 70 governors under him, which is a reference to the 70 Elohim or Elohim that ruled over the earth, and they're embodying these people. But George confronts him, and this person is actually referred to, this Antichrist figure, as the dragon. And we know that St. George slays him, and it literally says that the dragon, as in the serpent of old, embodies him. And so this is one of the earliest examples that I can see, definitely in Christian literature, where they are saying that this serpentine creature, an actual physical or spiritual dragon, is embodying a person. And that's basically the entire reptilian conspiracy in a nutshell, because that is what is being advocated, that these reptilians are, in many cases, replacing people. We'll get into that tonight too. Here's some more images here of St. Theodore and St. George together, buddies, slaying dragons. This one is from the 6th or 7th century. Yeah. Here they are again, just showing you that it's not a one-off. These 2 dudes showed up a lot. So I don't know what happened to St. Theodore. I don't know why he disappeared in history. And, this one, St. Catherine's Monastery. I really like St. Catherine's Monastery, and that's where we get the image of Jesus Christos there that perfectly matches the shroud. Wink, wink. Some interesting stuff there. All right, so let's talk about the origins of the reptilians. Now, some people will claim that it originated with Robert E. Howard's The Shadow Kingdom, which was a comic book that came out in 1929. Obviously, this is not the case, but like a lot of the science fiction at the time, like the Little Green Men, other things like that, we see the occult bringing it out. So this is what it reads on Wikipedia right here. This is like you could see a kind of a sketch of it here. There wasn't that much online. I was trying to look up actual original ink sketches. The Shadow Kingdom is a fantasy novelette by American writer Robert E. Howard, the first of his Cole stories set in his fictional Arthurian age. It was first published in the pulp magazine Weird Tales in August 1929. Now, the story introduces Cole himself. He is it says he is a spear slayer, and the Serpent's Men, it says that they don't appear in any of other works by Howard. It's a sword and sorcery tale. And interestingly enough, the story starts on Atlantis. So this guy, this is like where it starts from, the mythology, right? Cole, he's a barbarian. He leaves Atlantis and he goes and starts slaying all these serpents. So cutting to the chase, Brule reveals that the Serpent Men, an ancient pre-human race who had founded Velusia but were almost extinct, rule from the shadows using their snake cult religion and ability to disguise themselves with magic. Of course, we see the snake cult religion all over the world, every continent, South America, Asia, you name it. They intended to replace Cole with a disguised serpent man, just as they had done with his predecessors. Okay, so pay attention to this right here. So these serpent creatures actually have the ability to look just like you and me. Like they can come in and they could just take over, and you can't really know the difference. Now, before people freak out about this, there have to be specific qualifications to why they're able to come and take you out and replace you. The next day, the Serpent Men again attempt to replace Cole. He and Brule are, through an illusion, tricked into a separate room instead of the real council, surrounded by serpent men disguised as the counselors. And Cole, the main character, realizes that the trap in time, and the two barely defeat their opponents. Heading into the real council room, they see another Cole. So basically, this guy walks in, he sees himself. The imposter Cole is killed by the real one because the imposter was, of course, a reptilian, revealing the fake as a serpent man and also revealing the truth of the existence of the serpent men in general. And the story ends with Cole's oath to hunt and destroy the rest of the serpent men. Sounds like a fascinating story. Now, this is a modern kind of comic book illustration there, but you can see he is killing the imposter himself. And then as he kills him, he reveals himself to be a reptilian, the Shadow Kingdom. Now, this is something that this is one of my earliest memories. How about you guys? The Land of the Lost. So, I mean, it had to have been like what, for me, 1983 in the whereabouts. Now, I know the show came out in the mid 70s, so it would have been reruns by the time I was watching it. Some of my earliest memories of TV was watching Chips and Land of the Lost, interestingly enough. And these guys used to freak me out. These guys in the rubber suits, these slee stacks. And I remember they walked really slowly. I have literally not seen this show since probably like 1983, 1984. It would have been when I was in preschool and I was staying home watching it. But I did put these stills from, I had to hunt these down, I think that's an Allosaurus. I don't think it's a T-Rex. But I remember as a child getting so freaked out when these big old like rubbery claymation dinosaurs are lumbering after them. And the father and his daughter, they would be running up the steps of the cave. I'm like, you're not going to make it. And then I was always so relieved, like, oh, when they finally made it into the cave, and then like this big old hand puppet, like is like rah, coming in. I always used to love that. Just good memories. But these Sleestack characters are kind of creepy. They're extra dimensional species of reptilian humanoids, which is exactly what the reptilians are. They're multi-dimensional. And I could have taken you to, there's actually a Sleestack page if you're interested in looking it up. Go check it out. You got a few minutes on the toilet, go read through it. I took one paragraph here on their habitat. I thought this was interesting. So due to their sensitivity at light, the Sleestack tend to live underground in the caves and caverns under the lost city in the Land of the Lost, which is a big thing about the reptilians, that they live underground. And the thermal energies, the volcanic magma underground tends to control their periods of activity. And that's the other thing, right? They're cold-blooded creatures, so they need the warmth. Here's another big one here, V. You guys remember this? I think the first one came out in 1983. 84 was a follow-up, and then there was a TV show in 85. And they were called the Visitors. They were these reptilians that came to Earth. And they deceived mankind by putting on like a fake kind of skin over them. And this is for all you flat earth researchers out there, this is where they actually showed I think this still is from 84. The main villain there, she actually has instead of a globe, she has a firmament with the constellations in it, the zodiac, and it shows a flat earth down there, and it shows the sun and moon going around, and they hauled that out in front of, like, the reptilians are telling you, and then of course lying to you about it. So let me read you this plot, because once again this really digs into the reptilian mythos on what's going on in the world. It's really kind of shocking, some of these things that they'll just shove right in our faces and then tell us gaslight us into we're crazy for believing this conspiracy. The Visitors, as these aliens were known, the Visitors were a militaristic race of reptilian aliens who were from a planet near the star Sirius, which was located in the Canis Major constellation. Now, of course, in any time in this kind of research, just cut out the fat, right? Whenever you're seeing all this stuff about other planets in space. At some point, their civilization became dominated by a charismatic dictator known as the Leader. I wonder if he had like orange hair or anything like that. I'm not really sure. The Tangerine Tornado, or what, I don't know what his name was, but he was known as the Leader by his people. Their homeworld suffered from severe environmental issues that brought the Visitors close to extinction, which is the story of the Anunnaki, kind of, according to Zecharia Sitchin, by the way, too. So that's kind of interesting. It's like right out of his playbook. They thus created a fleet of motherships to travel to the stars and plunder other worlds. And during their travels, a number of their unmanned ships discovered the planet Earth. A plan was formed to subvert the native species into visitor domination. Their first act was to learn their languages and disguise themselves in a latex rubber-like skin to appear human. All right, so capiche, we got that. The visitors also adopted human names to be more approachable to humanity. No visitor has ever used his or her real name during the mission to Earth. A fleet of 50 visitor vessels was sent, led by Supreme Commander John, in order to carry out the leader's plan. As Earth possessed an abundance of water, it was considered a prime ground for the harvesting this resource needed not only for sustenance, but to power visitor technology. The plan to strip the Earth's resources was expected to take a generation to complete. A small group opposed the leader's plan for conquest, forming into the fifth column. I don't need to cover all that there. Let me just jump to the conclusion here. Ultimately, this was all a front. What was a front? Well, their plan. Oh, they're visiting the United Nations and all that kind of stuff. Of course, it would involve the United Nations. It's a swamp for the reptilians, undoubtedly. This was all a front designed by the visitors to lull humanity into a false sense of complacency. That's right there. That is the reptilian narrative for you 101. They began projecting a positive public image in order to get many members of mankind enthralled by their appearance while working to subvert humans. Furthermore, through the use of Diana's conversion process, Diana was a girl, the woman holding up the flat earth model. They began brainwashing select members of the scientific community in order to turn the greater human populace against their scientists that were the only threat to the visitors. So there you go. Like anyone who actually speaks the truth, a whistleblower or whatever, they're going to be suppressed, right? And they're looking for specific scientists and humans to go along with their agenda and promote it. Our basic news cycle. As the process continued, the leader placed a command to use conversion on the entire human race, but the species proved to possess a stronger will than was first believed. As such, they continued with their slow subversion of humanity instead. Furthermore, the claim that they needed certain chemicals to reinvigorate their own ecosystem was a lie. So basically, you know, the reason, the stuff that they were shelling out, you know, and saying that they needed from humanity was all made up. As these compounds, once transported to the mothership, were later jettisoned into the air. It's almost like, kind of like the space narrative itself, right? That's part of the lie. All right. Now, here's another kind of interesting element to the adding to the St. George mythos, and it's the Order of the Dragon. So top left to right here, you can see King of Hungary. His name is Sigismund. You see the Holy Roman Emperor and founder of the Order of the Dragon. You see Henry V, King of England. And you see good old Vlad there. That's I think that's is that Dracula's father? I think it is Vlad the Impaler. These are all the founders of the Order of the Dragon, and it was created in the 15th century. It looks like the order was right around 1431. And then below here we see some wood and bone saddle that was reputedly presented to Henry V by Sigismund in 1416, and a modern recreation of the order's Ouroboros device. Now, it's a little bit different than the Ouroboros. If you look over there on the right, you do see a tav and then or a taw, and then under that, the dragon is not eating its own tail. It has been suggested by some that the tail is actually trying to choke the dragon. So it's almost like taking the Ouroboros and trying to kill this repeated recycle of it. Now, looking into this Order of the Dragon, I'm going to be clear here that I don't, it's kind of hard when you're looking at history. I wasn't there, and so I don't know if the Order of the Dragon are the good guys or the bad guys. All right, you guys have, some of you guys know that I looked into the Knights Templar, and I'm like, I know all the conspiracies out there with the Knights Templars, but what if the Knights Templars really were the good guys? What if it was actually a kangaroo court? It was all propaganda, you know, from the winners of the war, that made them into the bad guys, right? And the controllers took them over. I don't really know what the Order of the Dragon was. They claimed they were there to defeat the dragon. This was let's just see what it says on Wikipedia here. It was a monarchical, chivalric. It's late, guys. It's gonna be a tough night. It was a chivalrous order. It was selected only for higher aristocracy and monarchs, and it was founded in, there it is right there, 1408 by Sigismund of Luxembourg, who was then king of Hungary and Croatia, and later also the Holy Roman Emperor. And it was fashioned after the military order of the Crusades, requiring its initiates to defend the cross and fight the enemies of Christianity, particularly the Ottoman Empire. Now, I could see this going both ways, just so you know. The order flourished during the first half of the 15th century, primarily in Germany and Italy. And after Sigismund's death in 1437, its importance declined in Western Europe, or so we're told. Of course, the prince of Vlad II Dracul was the father of Vlad the Impaler, and he took his name. This is where we get Dracula, Dracul, after the Order of the Dragon. So it's really interesting that we all know about Dracula, and it actually comes from this order, who may have been a cover for the reptilian. So I could see this going in two ways. I could see this being a end of the millennial kingdom kind of takeover, kind of reestablishment of this reptilian order, or maybe a last ditch effort to stop them, if you get my drift. It could go either way. I really don't know. I mean, let's just put it this way. Just because Vlad the Impaler was a naughty vampire that went down in Dracula lore, I mean, did the apple fall far from the tree or close to the tree? Like, is it daddy's fault? I don't really know. I'll let you guys decide that. But this is where it gets really interesting, because the order adopted St. George as its patron saint, the slayer of the dragon, whose legendary defeat of a dragon was used as a symbol for the military and religious ethos of the order. So again, were these guys going around slaying? Remember now, St. George, the guy he slayed, it wasn't an actual dragon, according to the earliest text that I can find that went later in artwork. It was a guy with a dragon living within him, right? A seraphim angel, a reptilian. So were these guys going around actually slaying vampires and dragon lords, or were they the dragon lords themselves? I'll let you guys decide. Here's one of the earliest depictions of these Order of the Dragon Slayer people. And you can see there that he has a dragon emblem with wings on his chest. Now, that's kind of interesting, and I want you to remember that when we get to a alien account later on tonight. Another one of the reasons why this caught my fancy is, if you recall, I went into the prophecy that was Merlin to Vortigern regarding the two dragons. And this is what Merlin, the story was, is that this king, leading up to the birth of King Arthur, there was these two dragons that were fighting on his lawn, pretty much. I mean, they dug them out of the ground. They were underground. I don't need to get into all the specifics of that. And one was red and one was white. And the white dragon defeated the red dragon. And this bothered all of them, because the red dragon represented their lordship, and the white dragon represented the Anglo-Saxons, and they were going to come in and conquer. And this is Merlin's prophecy. He says, "Woe to the red dragon, for his banishment hastens on. His lurking hold shall be seized by the white dragon, which signifies the Saxons, whom you invited over. But the red denotes the British nation, which shall be oppressed by the white. Therefore shall its mountains be leveled as the valleys, and the rivers of the valleys shall run with blood. And the exercise of religion shall be destroyed, and churches be laid open to ruin. At last the oppressed shall prevail and oppose the cruelty of foreigners." That comes from the History of the Kings of Britain, 7:3. So it's important to note here, and I'll get more into this next week, that there are actually good dragons and bad dragons, right? They're not like, there's actually, believe it or not, guys, there's good reptilians. I know that as a soundbite that could sound really terrible, but If they are indeed seraphim angels, then there are good seraphim, and I'm going to show you examples of good dragons next week too. So in this case, this white dragon was a good dragon. It defeated this evil dragon, this red dragon, and but then this is the promise that Merlin gives when the red dragon reemerges again after a time. It shall rain a shower of blood, and a raging famine shall afflict mankind. When these things happen, the red one shall be grieved, but when his fatigue is over, so after a time, he shall grow strong again. And then shall misfortunes hasten upon the white one, and the buildings of his garden shall be pulled down. That's really interesting. So this idea is this white dragon will rule over Britain, and there's going to be all these buildings that are going to be built. But when the red dragon comes back into power again, he's going to tear down these buildings. So the red dragon and the white dragon, of course, we see them pitted against each other. The flag of Wales today is now the red dragon. They have raised the red dragon. They say the red dragon is back in control again. The white dragon is gone. We know this happened with the House of Tudors, with the formation of it, with King Henry the Seventh, I believe it was. And remember now, King Henry V was in the Order of the Dragon. He was going around slaying the dragons, or he was one of them. We don't really know, right? Could go either way. I kind of like to think that maybe they were a badass order that were going around trying to slay reptilians, just like St. George. Maybe I'm just romanticizing the past, but I think that's kind of a badass way to look at it. Well, when King Henry VIII came into power in the 1500s, I've shown you guys this before. He destroyed in like 20 short years something like 800 of these white dragon Anglo-Saxon cathedrals, castles, abbeys, and so on and so forth. I mean, shocking amount. So when we talk about like the world fairs and stuff and destroying quote unquote old Tartare, this has been going on for like 500 years. It started immediately. They started just tearing these down. This was the fulfillment of the prophecy of what Merlin said, that they would come in and tear them down. And so it started right away. All right, so let's talk about the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, connecting the reptilians with St. George. You know, it's kind of interesting when you look at the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. There's probably, I'm going to say this because there's going to be some commenter that said this is it's a hoax. You know, I was kind of looking into this recently because it has my curiosity. Is the Emerald Tablet of Thoth a hoax or not? And the way the internet is designed, obviously, I don't know. I don't know if this is legitimate or not. I started out with St. George for a reason. I wanted to show you a text that indeed early Christianity believed that a reptilian creature embodied the Antichrist who St. George slew. The internet's interesting because if you're looking into this being a hoax, you're going to get all these selections where like AI and Google are going to tell you that it's all invented. But if you look into it being legitimate, like AI and Google and everything else, they're going to tell you it's, you know, thousands and thousands of years old. It's really weird. It's like the internet is it's being built up in such a way to have to kind of like compartmentalize everyone with different views. It's really interesting. I was looking a lot into that today. So this is what it says. Speak I of ancient Atlantis. Speak of the days of the kingdom of shadows. Speak of the coming of the children of shadows. Out of the great deep were they called by the wisdom of earthmen, called for the purpose of gaining great power. So according to this, they did not come from outer space. They came from deep below us in the earth. Far in the past, before Atlantis existed, men there were who delved into darkness, using dark magic, calling up beings from the great deep below us. So if we were even here to and I don't attribute these necessarily to the Watchers. I think that is a separate account. But even if it's kind of interesting that they're actually saying that the only reason the incursion happened or was allowed to happen was because men invited them in. It's the equivalent of like a spirit a ghost, whatever, can't enter your house unless if you invite them in. And, you know, they knock on your door. Can I come in and play? Right. And a lot of ghost stories start this way. And how does it end? They bring their friends. You invite them in and they bring their friends in, right? That seems to be what's happening right here. Mankind using dark magic invited them to their homes to play, and then they came in and took over. Forth came they into this cycle. Formless were they of another vibration. So there you have your multi kind of fourth or fifth or whatever dimensional creature that is coming into a third dimensional space. Existing unseen by the children of earthmen. Only through blood could they have formed being. Only through man could they live in the world. In ages past were they conquered by masters, driven below to the place whence they came. So it sounds like they cyclically come back and come forth again. So I think that they would have reemerged again after the millennial kingdom. But some there were who remained hidden in spaces and plains unknown to man. Lived they in Atlantis as shadows, but at times they appeared among men. When the blood was offered, for they came they to dwell among men. In the form of man they amongst us, but only to sight were they as are men, serpent-headed when the glamour was lifted, but appearing to man as men among men, crept they into the councils, taking forms that were like unto men, slaying by their arts the chiefs of the kingdoms, taking their form and ruling over men. Only by magic could they be discovered. Only by sound could their faces be seen. Sought they from the kingdom of shadows to destroy man and rule in his place. So, I'm not going to be showing any videos tonight. You guys can all look this up. Most of you have seen it. Lady Gaga, George H.W. Bush is a popular one, and asking, are these people embodied by reptilians? And you can see like their eyes change. They become like kind of like spear tipped and or slithered, and it's kind of creepy. And they look possessed at that time. And so the idea here is that you have to kind of really look at them to catch, like in a split second, whether or not they are who they say they are, whether they're reptilian or human or not. But know ye, the masters were mighty in magic, able to lift the veil from the face of the serpent, able to send him back to his place. Came they to man and taught him the secret, the word that only a man can pronounce. There's that kind of like that secret combination again that we see in writings of Abraham. This idea that some words put together have meaning and they can actually do things. Swift then they lifted the veil from the serpent and cast him forth from the place among men. Yet beware, the serpent still liveth in a place that is open at times to the world. Unseen they walk among thee in places where the rites have been said. Again, as time passes onward, shall they take the semblance of men. So it's promising that, again, I think a lot of us will agree we live in that time. Called may they be by the master who knows the white or the black, but only the white master may control and bind them while in the flesh. Now, this is going to, we're going to be treading on perhaps some modern political, religio-political environment right now on this idea of white magic and black magic. So pay attention to this. According to this, the reptilian's fear is the one who can use white magic, that he can come in and control them and he can stop them. So, but only the white master may control and bind them while in the flesh. Seek not the kingdom of shadows. That's good advice. For evil will surely appear. For only the master of brightness shall conquer the shadow of fear. Know ye, O my brother, that fear is an obstacle great. Be master of all in the brightness. The shadow will soon disappear. Hear ye and heed my wisdom. The voice of light is clear. Seek not the valley of shadow, and light will only appear. I'm just kind of throwing that out there for those of you that, I'll just say his name, Donald Trump, who are claiming him to be the white master, going up against, in the checkerboard of duality game, going up against the shadows. But even if that is true, if that is what is happening right now, it's still a fascinating story, because we just pay attention to what's happening, and you're seeing the shadowy creatures that have been out in the open the whole time. They're squealing right now, like just squirming, and it appears that there's nothing they can do about it. So kind of interesting. Of course, this is one of the great movies, 101 movies for all truthers out there. If anyone has woken up to the truth of our realm, and you have not seen They Live, what are you waiting for? You need to see it. This is, of course, not fiction as far as I'm concerned. This is the truth in plain sight. And I remember the first time I saw this, and he's putting on these glasses, and he's looking around, right? He could see who the reptilians are, and he could see the normal people. There was one scene that really struck me where he puts on his glasses, and there's this normal dude, just a guy in a suit working a job, and he's got these, I think there's 2 reptilian buddies that he's with, and he's like, this human is like, I don't get it. I didn't get the job promotion. And they just pat him on the back. They're like, oh, maybe next time. But they're in on the joke. He didn't get the promotion, right? Because he's not one of them. And it gets even creepier. You got the politicians, you got the newscasters, the police department, all these different people, all different, but you see the humans in all different walks as well. The great thing about this fight scene where he puts on these glasses onto his friend, and they're wrestling in the back alley. It's a brutal fight scene. It takes like several minutes of beating each other down. It's a great metaphor for how difficult it is to get someone to put on those glasses and actually see the truth. People really, really fight against it. But They Live, great movie. Check it out. Rated R, of course, so not children appropriate. All right, the House of Windsor and the Reptilians. Now, David Icke is a mainstream conspiracy theorist. He is in all the algorithms. Take that for what it is. And I will say this: what I'm about to read for you, I'm going to read to you an actual interview. I'm going to read to you a few interviews tonight, and all I'm doing is I'm reading these interviews. Okay. I wasn't there. I don't know if what I'm about to read is true. The problem is with witnesses, guys, if this is what's so evil about lying and false witnesses. All right. If what I'm about to read to you are false witnesses, then they have done a lot of damage to the royal family. Again, I wasn't there. I don't know. But the House of Windsor and the Reptilians. There you see the little girl there, the Queen of England, now deceased. Of course, her son is in charge. That would be her daddy right there. This is when she got married to Prince Philip, and of course Charles is king now. Here's a great picture. I love this one. This is where Daddy is teaching his wife and his 2 daughters to do the Elon Musk. That was a big dance craze back in the 1930s. You may have heard about it, and I won't do it for you here on camera, but it's this thing where you roll your hand out and you do it in waves. You do it to the beats of the tanks. It's kind of interesting that they were, I don't know what was going on there, but I did see the video footage of that too, and it's very clear. They were doing a little bit more than Elon Musk. So this is the coat of arms of the House of Windsor. And you see the lion and the unicorn. That's Ephraim and Manasseh with Judah united. So very British. And then you got the Harp of David down there. So that's kind of interesting. Some interesting things going on. I want to read you a little bit about the House of Windsor. It's actually a new title. It's only about 110 years old. The House of Windsor is the reigning house of the United Kingdom and the other Commonwealth realms. Now, the house's name was inspired by the historic Windsor Castle estate. I have visited Windsor Castle. It's a little creepy in there in a few places. You see some reptilian stuff in there. I didn't really know a lot about that back then, so I should have taken more pictures. The house was founded on 17th July, 1917, talking about the House of Windsor, when King George V changed the name of the royal house from the German Saxe, Coburg, and Gotha to the English Windsor due to anti-German sentiment during the First World War. The reason I read that to you is I have speculated this in the past. Now, when you get into David Icke's research, he talks a lot about the blue bloods, right? The blue bloods versus the red bloods. Now that we're on the other end of the Millennial Kingdom research, and I am of the opinion, the very strong opinion that the Millennial Kingdom of Yahushua HaMashiach has already physically manifested upon this earth, and it was, of course, the Middle Ages, and that Israel ruled over the earth. I'm not so certain that the kings of this earth are necessarily our bastard kings. I think that they might have a right to rule. They might be Israel. And so it is interesting that the House of Windsor, they claim to come from the Saxons. These might be the sons of Yitzhak, and they might have a right to rule. The reptilian theory is not necessarily that these people don't exist. They're actually real humans having children, but they are either possessed or replaced by these creatures. And I think that's really important to note. And I'll be talking about that later tonight when we get into some Jewish literature and showing you how that works. So this is the interview that Princess Diana's confidant Christine Fitzgerald gave to David Icke in The Biggest Secret. And this is going to be a shout out to Zen Garcia, a friend of mine. I pulled this interview. I got this interview from one of his books, and he put it in there. So go check out Zen's book, The Dragon Lords. And he has a lot of great content on the reptilians in there. While researching this book, I was introduced to Christine Fitzgerald, a brilliant and gifted healer who was a close friend and confidant of Diana for 9 years. Again, I'm just assuming that Christine Fitzgerald is a true witness and not a false witness. There are a lot of false witnesses out there. And if she's going to if the story she's about to say is made up, that's really damaging. And that's a naughty no-no. It breaks Torah. So we don't want to do that, right? Because of Christine's understanding of the esoteric, Diana was able to talk to her about matters she would not dare to share with anyone else for fear of being dubbed crazy. It is clear that Diana knew about the true nature of the royal family's genetic history and the reptilian control. Her nicknames for the Windsors were the lizards and the reptiles, and she used to say in all seriousness, they're not human. So according to this, Diana was human, and of course her two children, her two sons, were also human. There is a very good reason for Diana using this description of the Windsors. As her deprogramming continued, Arizona Wilder remembered clearly a ritual she attended at Clarence House, the Queen Mother's home near to Buckingham Palace, in which Diana was shown who the Windsors really are. It took place in the first 7 days of July 1981. I would have been 6 months old then, just before Diana and Charles were married on the 29th. This period is the last 7 days of the cycle of the oak tree, according to esoteric law, and the ritual was called the Awakening of the Bride. This is a ritual for all families, all females of the 13 bloodlines who are going to be in publicly high positions and marry reptilians to produce the new generation of rulers. Arizona says that the Queen Mother, the Queen, Prince Philip, Lady Fermoy, Diana's father, Earl Spencer, Prince Charles, and Camilla Parker Bowles were all present when Diana was brought into the room. She was wearing a white gown, and a drug had been administered by Lady Fermoy. Diana was told that she should consider her union with Prince Charles as only a means to produce heirs and nothing else. Camilla was his consort, not hers. Arizona says that Prince Philip and so obviously, like the affair that came out later in the media and all that kind of stuff, they were already intended to be lovers from the very beginning. Arizona says that Prince Philip and the Queen Mother then shapeshifted into reptiles in front of her to show Diana who they really were. That had to be a faint, inducing moment for sure. Diana was terrified but quiet, she said. Diana was told that if she ever revealed the truth about them, she would be killed. So she basically, at that moment, they gave her, obviously her father had to be in on it, and he's, kind of breeding his daughter. Basically, it's kind of like, we're showing this to you now. You can choose to go along with it, or we're just going to kill you right now in a very horrific fashion. So it's kind of like, what are you going to pick, right? So this is taped from Christine Fitzgerald, Princess Diana's personal confidant. Okay, whatever. Let's see. The Queen Mother, now that's a serious piece of wizardry. The Queen Mother is a lot older than people think. To be honest, the royal family hasn't died for a long time. They have just metamorphosized. It's sort of cloning, but in a different way. They take pieces of flesh and rebuild the body from one little bit. Because it's lizard, because it's cold-blooded, it's much easier for them to do Frankenstein, four-letter word, than it is for us. The different bodies are just different electrical vibrations, and they have got that secret. They've got the secret of the microcurrents. It's so micro, so specific. These radio waves that actually create the bodies. These are the energies I work with when I'm healing. Whenever they get into the sci-fi tech stuff, it always kind of makes me a little bit skeptical that it's like, she should just say, you know what, like, I don't know how they do it. Like, they just don't, maybe she's not the best person to try to explain. I don't know. You guys decide. They know the vibration of life, and because they are cold-blooded, they are reptiles. They have no wish to make the earth the perfect harmony it could be, or to heal the earth from the damage that's been done. The earth's been attacked for eons by different extraterrestrials. There's your, just whatever, just cross that out. It's been like a football for so long. This place was a bus stop for many different aliens. All these aliens, they could cope with everything, including the noxious gases. They're landing all the time and coming up from the bowels of the earth. So right there, I put that in red because it's like, well, where are they coming from? From the space or the earth? Because we know, of course, with UFO research that they're all coming out from the water. They're coming up from the earth. They're not coming from space. So it's like, let's make up our minds here. They look like reptiles originally, but they look like us when they get out now through the electrical vibration, that life key I talked about. They can manifest how they want to. All the real knowledge has been taken out and shredded and put back in another way. The Queen Mother is chief toad of this part of Europe, and they have people like her in each continent. Most people, the hangers-on, don't know, about the reptiles. They are just in awe of these people because they are so powerful. Balmoral is a very, very nasty place. That's somewhere they want to dig underground. They will find reptile fossils. It goes back that far. That kind of struck me right there. And if I make it to Credo tonight, the African shaman, he says the same thing. He talks about like dinosaurs as though they were like the reptilians. And this is part of why I think that there's a truth to these fossils, that it's literally like dead reptilians from the past, from different shapes and stuff, that they were actually highly intelligent. They will find reptile fossils. It goes back that far. Don't think of people like the Queen Mother and Queen Victoria as different people. Think of them as the same person, which after a while has had to replace their coat. When the flesh dies, that energy, while it's dying, will be immediately up someone else's backside, or she calls it jaxie. I guess that's like British slang. It's very vampire, worse than vampire. They are not going to come to you with hooked teeth and suck your blood. Fear is their food. And that's the key to understanding everything, right? Like don't even listen to fear porn. There's even a lot of truthers out there. They're trying to feed you fear porn. Don't even go that route, because it's true of any kind of demonic activity. They feed off of your fear. Like that whole worldwide staged event we had a few years ago where everyone was masking up, all fear-based. Like that was probably like a buffet court, a feasting for reptilian and demonic activity. They can actually take fear and manifest it into a tangible thing. This I fully believe. Like this is totally legit. Even if the House of Windsor is not reptilians, if that turns out not to be true, this part is legit. The key is the vibrational current. At that vibrational current, they can manifest anything from anything. It's like a holographic image. We are all minerals and water vibrating, which I think that's true too. This is all an illusion we are living in. That's the secret. You know, when the monarchy's fallen, it's not the end of it. They will manifest in another form. The reptiles have never been defeated, and this is the closest they have come to it. So why is this the closest that they have ever come to being defeated? The reason they are so threatened today is because the earth is in such trouble and the mental power of people is returning. All right. Now, when you start digging into reptilian research, David Icke, all this stuff, Blavatsky, Credo, you start getting into a lot of Christ consciousness. All right. I want to let everyone know out there, you guys are all free to your opinion. I do not adhere to Christ consciousness in any way, shape, or form, or any of that new age stuff. However, I do fully agree that there is a mass awakening consciousness, call it an age of Aquarius thing. We have entered into a new paradigm. There is a shift, and people are starting to realize what's going down. And I do think that the tables have turned, and we have seen in the last few years where our overlords, the reptilians, they are actually the ones in fear now. I think that they are now afraid of us. This is their most frightening time, but this is not going to kill them. There are long centuries before it's over yet. Well, I don't know how she knows that. I mean, where's she getting that from? It could be a year, it could be 100, it could be 1,000. I don't really know. Well, we'll have to wait and see. The difference this time is that it'll be more difficult for them, and they're going to have to settle for less, and the earth people are going to get more. I guess I'll take that deal. If that's all that's being offered. I mean, it sounds better than them controlling us fully. If we can get them on the run, I'll take that victory, I guess. But even though these reptilian ones are, there's another 4-letter word there with an added ers at the end. They are sad, pathetic beasts, really, while humanity is galloping towards light. They're just pathetic lumps of nastiness. They're just meanies. They're just terrible meanies who aren't going to win. I can't talk about this everywhere because they would just go, Christine, get a white coat, put it on backwards, get out. But I want to end to this 4-letter word. So there you have it right there. This was the alternate cover. I almost went with tonight. The queen mother, the grand toad herself, who's now sadly deceased, and her son, King or Prince Charles, is now King Charles. But that's old history. You guys all know that. Here is more of David Icke's interview. This with Arizona Wilder. Here you see Queen Elizabeth II in Balmoral Castle. This will be the context of this right here. David Icke says, what are your memories of conducting the rituals for the royal family? What happened? What were they doing? And Arizona Wilder says, one thing that sticks out in my mind, this was back in the late 70s, before Charles was married to Diana. Charles was involved with Camilla Parker Bowles. This just goes to show, I've seen her in the news my entire life. I don't even know how to pronounce her last name. It's so embarrassing. Bowles or Bowles? I think it's Bowles. Clearly shows I'm not British. I'm an American who just doesn't really pay attention to British news much. But and she does not. And all I know is I had a British aunt. I grew up with a British aunt, and she just basically would keep us updated on what the Brits felt about her, and they all loved Diana, and they did not like her very much. So, and she does not shapeshift, but she became pregnant by Charles, and she produced the baby, and this baby was presented at the ritual and killed, and that is the price, the firstborn between these two. And eventually these two will marry. And that is the price that is to be paid, the sacrifice of the firstborn between the union of these two people. And I've seen that there. Something else that sticks out in my mind, it was sometime in the late 80s that I saw a very kind of dark man. He seemed to be Egyptian or Arabic. And I heard the name Fayed being mentioned, and the Queen Mother was there, and I called her the Black Queen. And she and he were talking very seriously and at some length about the subject. They were mentioning Diana, and they were mentioning his son Dottie. And at the time, I didn't know who Dottie was. I knew who Diana was. I never saw her at any rituals. And he asked, where did this conversation take place? And she says, this took place at Balmoral Castle. And I heard them talking about a marriage between these two. And I thought at the time, well, she's married to Charles. How can there be a marriage if she's married to Charles? I didn't understand why the Queen Mother and this person that I now know to be Muhammad al-Fayed, because I heard Fayed talking, and I'd seen them together at Balmoral Castle. I overheard the conversation, but I'd seen them also at Mothers of Darkness Chateau in Brussels. And they were talking about a union between Diana and his son Dottie back in the late 80s. And I did not understand at that time because I understood Diana to be married to Charles. I knew that she was married to Charles and they had 2 children, or they were about to have another. And the Queen Mother, all I could pick up was that for some reason there was a malevolence towards Diana. And Diana, I had never seen at a ritual. I wondered what she knew about all this. So I stopped the interview there. And there's, if you want to look a little bit at who she's talking about, this Fayed, al-Fayed, Muhammad al-Fayed individual, that's his picture there. He died just recently, a year ago, 2 years ago, excuse me, August 2023. He was an Egyptian businessman whose residence and primary business interests were in the United Kingdom from the mid-1960s. His business interests included ownership of the Hotel Ritz Paris, Harrods Department Store, and Fulham Football Club. At the time of his death in 2023, Forbes estimated his wealth at $2 billion. That's officially $2 billion. Fayed was married to Samira, last name Khashoggi, from 1954 to 1956. They had a son, Dottie, who was in a romantic relationship with Diana, Prince of Wales, when they both died in a car crash in Paris in 1997. Fayed falsely claimed that the crash was a result of a conspiracy. Now, keep in mind, this is a Wikipedia article here, including that the crash was orchestrated by MI6 on the instructions of Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. In 2011, Fayed financially supported an unreleased documentary film, Unlawful Killing, that presented his version of events. So this is kind of interesting if you've got on David Icke's side. Of course, I will remind you that David Icke is, he's like the go-to guy for, the official narrative, right? So there's that. He's accusing in his writings of this guy of being one of the reptilians, Muhammad al-Fayed, and then you see Muhammad al-Fayed being a bit of a conspiracy theorist himself. So these guys, whatever the truth is, they like to feed us information. David Icke asks, what have you seen the royal family do? The Queen Mother and the other people you've seen at the rituals. What have you seen them do? And this gets a little graphic here. I've seen all of them drink human blood and consume human flesh. And they have their own goblets. They have blood in these goblets, which are entrusted with jewels. And they also have their own daggers. And the daggers goes into the goblet and they stir the blood around with it. But it's also a symbol of the phallus going into the vagina when they are doing this. And I've seen them do this. And some of them even have, like the Queen Mother had her own little, it's almost between a very elaborate ornate chair or a throne kind of thing brought in for her to sit upon. Because before these rituals actually start, people move around the room and talk or recognize one another. It's a formal kind of ritualistic setup, the way they talk and the way they're introduced and introduce each other. It's like a court. What are they wearing? They are wearing robes, and they aren't wearing anything underneath the robes. And the robes are very ornate. The one thing in common they have is the red color, like blood. And some of them have purple, and they have gold kinds of lines running through them. They have the Merovingian symbol of France, the fleur de lis, which is really interesting. I mean, David Icke in his research, he's like, this is like the bloodline, right? I don't know. I wasn't there, but well, one thing I want to show you tonight, that maybe these bloodlines aren't necessarily evil. Maybe they're actually very, 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 very royal. And what happens when you turn away from the law, when you turn away from the Torah, you actually, especially the more powerful you are, you actually invite them into your lives and to take over your life. We'll see that with Solomon tonight. And there are jewels that are sewn in a certain point on these robes, and they wear these robes, but they don't wear anything underneath these robes, because what is going to happen, what the rituals are all about, they are going to shape shift, and they can't have anything under the robes. Well, tell that to the Incredible Hulk, huh? Because he rips everything, but whatever, you know what I'm talking about. The pants never rip. And there are orgy kind of things that go on at the rituals also. And he asked, involving the royal families of Britain? Yes, involving the royal family of Britain, and the sacrifice and eating of, consuming the sacrifice, and they're involved in that. Again, it's the subject matter is dark tonight, but I have personally seen the footage. I'm not showing it tonight. Maybe you guys have too, of the unfortunate incident. Somebody is a pedestrian out in front of Buckingham Palace. I've stood in front of Buckingham Palace twice in my life. Once 6 years ago, and it was right about that time. I think it was 2019 when I saw the footage emerge. I don't know how old it was, if it was recent or not, of a naked little boy escaping through one of the upper windows. Like, there's literally a pedestrian out there with their cell phone, and they're zooming in on this going, what in the world is that? And it's a little boy naked escaping out of Buckingham Palace. And it's like, what was going on in there? So there's that, which was, of course, never addressed, to my knowledge, by the royal family. They're like, oh, that's just, that's little Timmy. He's our nephew. He was taking a bath, and he, escaped. We were slipping on the floor with the rubber ducky, and he got out the back window, that kind of thing. Yes, involving the royal family of Britain and I read that. So you've seen them do that? Yes, I have seen them do that. People in Britain listening to what you're saying would obviously be staggered. I guess anywhere in the world. But what would stagger them mostly is in Britain, the Queen Mother has an image of being the nation's grandmother, the nice old lady. And good old Queen Mum, what a lovely lady. What's your experience of the Queen Mother? In which Arizona Wilder says, she is very cold in reality, and she is very cruel. And she is very different than she comes across to the public. She's cold-blooded. If she feels that you are someone beneath her, even in the Illuminati, you're not her equal, or your station is above her, she will not speak to you. Sounds like Hollywood, actually. She will not recognize you. She obviously, from what I see, enjoys consuming human flesh. Gross. And then, of course, she says it's sickening. And it is indeed. The one person that she seems to be afraid of is Pindar. And then Icke says, people would also look at the Queen Mother's elderly, frail stature and find it very difficult to see her taking part in rituals and doing anything, if you like, active. Do they go into a different state in terms of age and strength and all of these other attributes when they actually shapeshift? And when she says, yes, the human body that they choose to occupy or take when it was young, it ages. So there you have it there. And so it seems like that they really do have real humans, and that these humans breed, but they will take a body at some stage. It could be when they're young, or maybe when they sign a deal when they're older or something like that. But when they take the reptilian form, these reptilians live hundreds of years. And so they have to have taken more than one human body to live in. A lot of them are much, much older. And I'm including the Queen Mother in this. She's older than people think that she is. She's been in more than one body, human form. And when the time comes, if it is time for her to go on, and it's still known that she has life or years to go, again, she will be put into the body, the essence of her and the reptilian form. The essence of her will go into another body that also has the ability to shapeshift into reptilian form. One of the pure reptilian human bloodlines is what David asked, which Arizona says, yes. And he asks, what happens when, take the Queen Mother as an example, what happens when they shapeshift? What do you see? And she says, or Arizona says, you start to see changes happen, and they're happening so fast that the closest thing I've seen to it is what they are now doing with computer technology. It's just now this, I just thought of this, is I keep calling Arizona she. I think Arizona is a she. I could be wrong. Someone can correct me out there. If Arizona is a guy, then my apologies. I'm pretty sure Arizona is a girl. But anyways, let's just go with that until I could be proven otherwise. It's just a literal transformation that happens very quickly. And they get taller and they get bigger, and they don't look at all as reptilians as they do as humans, and thus the wearing of the robes, because if they were enclosed, the clothes would be torn apart. And skipping this, what she says, she looks like, speaking of the Queen Mother, the nose portion gets very much longer and it grows into a snout kind of thing. She has fangs, incisors as teeth. There's a tongue. They all seem to have this kind of tongue when they are at this level. The tongue has a lot of long, hairy, pointed projections coming out of it. It's very long. And they don't have hands or feet. They have these claws. And they have scales. And also scales that seem to kind of disappear into one another. But it's more pronounced on the back. There seem to be lumps or protrusions coming from the head. There seem to be some kind of growth, appendages on the back. And they seem folded. And not all of them have that. And there's a tail. And a lot of times they will keep the tail curled. And I've seen her when she's very displeased with something. As I've seen other members like this tail is whipped around, very agitated, and she hisses. What color are they? And she says, which one in particular? Indicating there's probably multiple different colors. And he says, well, take the Queen Mother as an example. She's kind of a beige color on the underside. And by the time you're going up around to the back and the tail and the top of the head, on top of the nose, snout, whatever, they are dark speckles or large speckles of dark browns. The eyes, usually they're large. They are very round, and they look like they are coming out of their socket and very protruding. And usually the color ranges from a beige to a gold to a dark greenish golden. And there's this dark slit up and down, a vertical slit. And the eyes will look hooded. And when they look hooded, it's a very frightening thing, because it seems that when the eyes are hooded, they're about to do something. What do you mean by hooded? Well, the lids come down. And I guess it would be the same thing in a human as an expression of when someone's got an idea. Aha. And how tall are they when they shapeshift? They are about 7 feet tall, which that seems pretty consistent with a lot of what I've seen. Some are a little shorter, to a foot shorter. Some are a little bit taller than 7 feet. So what would the Queen and Prince Charles look like in the reptilian form? At the height? Well, that's the general appearance. Charles resembles in both ways, in human form and reptilian. He resembles Pindar. He's shorter, though, in reptilian form than Pindar. The way that the reptilian nose shapes into the snout, and at that point the jaw becomes the underpart, it's very much like Pindar. And his mother doesn't look quite the same as he does. What does the Queen look like? She's darker, not quite so pale. She's darker all over. She doesn't have the amount of, I would call it freckling. It's more like the skin is gradually getting darker. It's more smooth. And she does have the lumps up around her head and down the tail of the spine. Charles also has the tail down around the spine. And funny enough, he has the protrusions from the skull in reptilian form, where right above it seems like his ears would have been. What is it about the rituals that allow the shape-shifting to happen? When the victims are about to start being sacrificed, it's the sin of the blood. And they start shape-shifting at that point in time. And they can hardly wait to get to the blood. It's like they're addicted to the blood. And when the consumption of human flesh that allows. Now, here we can, obviously, one of the causes of the wars is the Federal Reserve, and we can look at other things, but clearly you can see here that aside from the need for worldwide fear and putting on psychodramatic events and other things like that in order to put us into fear and have us living life in fear, they need blood. They need blood sacrifice. So you can even see that with a lot of the wars going on, where they are having people slaughter each other so that they can, they could live off of that. What have you seen the queen or royal family do in relation to that? Have you seen them sacrifice and consume human flesh? There are certain times when they will actually do a sacrifice, or there will have been someone doing a sacrifice. And if it's not happening fast enough for them, they will step in and finish it themselves, because the sacrifice ritual has to be done through. Sacrificially, ritualistically, it has to have gone through. And they will step right in and just start tearing the throat out. And they are getting all of this blood from the jugular vein at the same time. And that has happened. When there are many there that are going to be sacrificed, they just can't wait to tear into the contents of the abdomen and stomach of the victim. Who have you seen do that? I've seen the Queen Mother do that, and Prince Philip and Charles. I've seen Guy, Dave, Rothschild do this. There's one of the Rothschilds. It seems that I've seen it more among royalty or so-called royalty than people who are not titled. It feels like they don't dare, but they shapeshift nonetheless. But it's the royals that step in and just start tearing away as they can hardly wait. How long can they hold the reptilian form in these occasions? During the rituals, it's much easier for them to hold the reptilian form. They can stay in that form. What they have a hard time holding is their human form. And as long as they are around blood and the scent of blood, they can't hold human form. Where do you think the story of Diana fits into all of this in terms of ritual you know about and the royal family background that you know about? What was that all about? What happened in Paris? True story. I will say this. I was actually standing in front of, it would have been, I guess, was it August or September? I don't even remember now, of 1997. Remember, it was 1997. I was in London. I was standing in front of Buckingham Palace, like right there at the gates, the gold gates, looking into Buckingham, when news broke over London and people started mourning. The word broke that Diana was in a tunnel and that she was killed in a car crash. I'll never forget that moment. And they loved her so much there in London. She was on the side of buses. She was on billboards, shopping bags. She was clearly the sweetheart of the UK. And I mean, I could totally see like this sacrifice happening. Case in point, Diana was a ritual sacrifice because she's named after the goddess Diana. Isn't that interesting? She was chosen from before birth for the purpose she served. I understand very well and I'm very empathetic towards Diana because in a way it parallels what happened to me. To have served your purpose, had 2 children, and then be tossed aside. To her horror, although she obviously never attended a ritual, she knew something was happening. And she knew what was going on and could not be trusted to be at a ritual anyways. And I don't think Diana would have attended a ritual. I don't think that they could get her to cooperate in this because she actually saw for herself that this was going on after she married Charles. The question is asked, is there any way when Diana was married to Charles without attending a blood ritual that she could have seen him or one of the others become a reptile? No, he's asking this because, it was put forward earlier that she actually did see them and she had to make that choice before she married them. Arizona Wilder says, they have a tendency when they are asleep to shapeshift, and they have to consciously hold their form. And when they're asleep, they have a tendency to not hold human form and to shapeshift into reptilians. And there could be other things that happen. I'm thinking of the times that Diana would have gone through a menstrual period. But that's one of the questions I had through this. Well, that would have also really triggered some of these people in the royal family that are reptilian around her to want to shapeshift. Now, I mean, not to get disgusting on you guys, but obviously we're on dark subject matter. This is kind of makes you wonder about one of the things why, menstrual blood is so attractive to dark occult studies, ritual, sex magic, that kind of stuff. And of course, it's forbidden in the Torah, right? You don't approach your woman in that way during this time because it's repulsive, but not to the reptilians. Any human woman in that household that would be having a period, that scent of blood would tend to cause a momentary shapeshift. And maybe that was, like when you see like some assuming George H.W. Bush was one of them. I don't see any reason why not, if this theory is correct. You could see that like in the interview, right? Like maybe there was a lady out there in the audience, or one of the technicians, or whatever. She was kind of on her period, whatever, and he wasn't able to, he was having a hard time keeping his form. What was the whole, what appears to be a ceremony surrounding her assassination? What was that about? The rumors that she was pregnant, and the Egyptian Dadi Fayed, and the place where it all happened, which is an ancient sacrificial site to the goddess Diana. How does that all figure in the rituals that you know about? The crone aspect of the goddess is Hecate, and the day of, am I pronouncing that right? The day of Hecate is August 13th. And what is very prevalent, so maybe it was August 13th. I'd have to look at the calendar. I don't even remember. I just remember being there. And what is very prevalent with the Illuminati and what they've done with the Druidism and the Egyptian religions is that they like to mirror the numbers. And so with the goddess Isis, her number is 18. And when you mirror it, it is 81. And that is the number of the sister of Isis, Nephthys. And Nephthys was considered the evil sister to Isis. With Hecate, I think what happened here is that she was sacrificed, and it was a very important sacrifice because 3 people died. And it was a picture of a triad of Isis, Osiris, and Horus to them. Horus being the unborn child, the Dadi Fayed, that Diana carried, and was 3 months old, which is another important fact and important to them. It's important to be 3 months old. Sacrificial babies are taken in utero at 3, 5, and 7 months. And when I heard about this was a deal that I understood now had gone down. And she had to die in that tunnel because that tunnel's a passageway for Diana, the goddess. And she died at the 13th pillar, again, because of Hecate. And she died on the 31st because it's a mirror image of 13. And my understanding of what I get inside of me, that's better, 31st. That sounds better, more like it. And my understanding of what I get inside of me, because I was told by Baron Guy de Rothschild last beginning of February when he was in this country, and he was here to try and reprogram me again and impregnate me, was that he was in the tunnel that night. He had to be there because not only was it a ritual death of Diana, this was also about taking her soul. And he was taking the soul of Diana, which no one else could do. Whoever was present there could not do it. He could do it, and he was in France. This is the hypnotic stare you talk about? Yes, and drawing in the breath. And he had to be there to do this ritual killing, this ritual murder. This would mean the ambulance team and a doctor that arrived within a minute of the crash coming the other way must have been in on the whole deal, or at least the people in charge of the ambulance team. From your experience of the kind of people involved in the Illuminati satanic network, do you think that's possible that they could set that up? Oh, yes, they do. Of course, I fully agree that, yes, that they were. And I've wondered in the past if Diana's death was a hoax. I don't know. I wasn't there. But yeah, the ambulance team is really sketchy. Anyways, going back to Arizona Wilder. Yes, I do. I do think they were in on it. I've seen a lot of things set up that if you did not know, you weren't in on the so-called inner circle or know what the Illuminati can do, because they depend on people not believing they are really there. You would have a hard time believing it, that this has been such a secretive group and worked in such insidious ways to infiltrate and control. And there are so many unanswered questions that they don't seem to be able to answer about Diana that keep coming up, in spite of all the reports that come out, because there are people who don't believe what they're hearing. A great movie that I recommend everybody watch on this. It came out in the 1990s. It had Michael Douglas in it, and it was called The Game. It took place in San Francisco, and Michael Douglas is, for his birthday, he's given a gift to enlist in the game, and it's for the elites. And it's a big, they tell you what psychodrama is. He goes through this big psychodramatic episode where he's basically being hunted down and killed the whole movie, and he's running from it. He doesn't realize at the end and that it's all, a game. It was all faked. But the fear was very real, and the experience that he went through that changed him. But what was really creepy about it is that the police are in on it, the ambulance drivers, like all these people keep showing up in his life, and they're all in on it. And he just cannot understand how this private company, this firm that runs the game, could be so all-encompassing in the city of San Francisco to have total control, and nobody knows that the game exists except for the very elite who can afford them. Same thing, like they're telling you this is how it's done. What would have been the purpose of creating such a clear and definite ritual in the assassination of Diana? What would be the purpose of that when they could have killed her in another way? Because it had to be done as a ritual, because they were going to take her soul. And it had to happen in the tunnel. It had to happen that way. It had to happen in that year. And there's a timeline to all of this. I think that's all of that interview. The interview goes on and on. That's all I'm going to be talking about tonight. But I will point out, too, that even if it was a hoax, it was a stage. Let's say Diana never did die. Just if that scenario is possible, that it is still a ritual. Psychodramatic rituals are still real magic. You could still produce spells and have effects based on things that are not legitimate. All right, Solomon and Asmodeus. Let's read first from Tobit, because Tobit is in the Apocrypha, and so we know that this. I want to show you that this powerful entity, Asmodeus, is in the Bible, in the Apocrypha. Of course, I have the Sefer, so the Sefer treats this as just a normal book of the Bible. Tobit, chapter 2. It came to pass the same day that in the city of Madai, Sarah, the daughter of Reuel, was also reproached by her father's maids because that she had been married to 7 husbands whom Asmodeus, the evil spirit, had killed before they had lain with her. So the whole story here is that this spirit, demon, angel, God, lowercase God, of course, is in so incestuous or just love with this woman, Sarah, this Hebrew woman, that she keeps marrying these different guys, and the guy keeps going into the honeymoon chamber. Before they can get together, he strangles and kills, to the point that now, like, no guy wants to marry Sarah. She's still a virgin. Nobody wants to marry her because they're like, yeah, no, thank you. Like, I know what happens on the wedding night, and at least with a praying mantis, you get the pleasure first, but you don't even get the pleasure. Like, you go in there and you die, like, before anything happens. Like, I mean, some guys might even consider it if they knew that they were going to get pleasure first, but they're like, no, thank you. We're done. And so Raphael, one of the Ninja Turtles, one of the holy angels, Raphael comes and Tobit, and they take care of business. He teaches them how to repel. These are Raphael's instructions here. I don't need to go into this for lack of time tonight. Let's pick up here in verse 13. Then the young man answered the angel. The angel, again, gives him instructions on how to cast out this demon. I have heard, brother Azarias, that this maid hath been given to 7 men who all died in the marriage chamber. And now I am the only son of my father, and I am afraid. Yeah, I don't blame you, dude. Lest if I go into her, that I will die as the others before. For a wicked spirit loves her, which hurts nobody but those who come unto her. And of course, he's chased off. He's bound. It's a happy ending to the story. He takes the woman, marries her. They have many happy babies together. It's a good story. All right. Well, this same destroying, murderous angel appears in the Testament of Solomon. And there is a point to this. We're going to lead back into the reptilians, but I want to show you that he's actually one of them. He appears to be. And this is what it says. And I once bade another demon. So Solomon, he's got this ring, and he's forcing many different evil spirits, Ruachoth, to appear before him. And instantly there approached me the demon Asmodeus. So there he is again. He's making an appearance, bound. And I asked him, "Who are you?" But he shot on me a glance of anger and rage and said, "Well, and who are you?" And I said to him, thus punished as you are, answer you me? But he with rage said to me, but how will I answer you? For you are a son of man, whereas I was born an angel seed by a daughter of man. So this is he's actually accrediting himself to be one of the sons of the Watchers. He's Nephilim. He is now a disembodied spirit of one of the giants. He's one of the disembodied spirits of the giants. He's wandering the earth now, so that no word of our heavenly kind addressed to the earthborn can be overweening. And this is how he describes himself down in chapter 22. I am called Asmodeus among mortals, and my business is to plot against the newly wedded. So there we see the connection with Tobit, so that they may not know one another. And I sever them utterly by many calamities, and I waste away the beauty of virgin women and estrange their hearts. And I said to him, is this your only business? And he answered me, I transport men into fits of madness and desire when they have wives of their own. So it sounds like this guy likes to deal with midlife crisis, so that they leave them. So these men have these wives, are happy, but they go through a midlife crisis. They go through fits of madness and desire, and they leave their wives. And they go off by night and day to others that belong to other men. So now they're actually not only leaving their wives, they're committing adultery with other men's wives, with the result that they commit sin and fall into murderous deeds. I'm convinced that this entity, maybe he's got many working for him. I'm convinced this guy's totally legit and real. And I have seen in my own life the very powerful working of families getting completely devastated and destroyed. And in fact, this neighborhood that we moved into in Charleston, South Carolina, I think that the year after we moved here, we had, my wife and I were just in awe, fear of Yah, in awe of, there were about 4 homes all around us, just around us on the street, and just very dark, And we had the same things happening. We had one guy leave his wife and run off with a little bartender. We had another where a woman murdered her children and then committed suicide, and people leaving. It was just homes breaking up all around us, and we're just and of course Yah protected us, so we were good. But there was a destroying spirit going around and just ravaging the neighborhood, and we watched it happen. So, and he says here, he actually quotes Tobit. He says, by Raphael, the archangel that stands up before the throne of Allahayam, the liver and gall of a fish put me to flight. And that's actually what happened in Tobit. I didn't really want to cover all that in Tobit. I just want to set this up. So let's look at where Asmodeus shows up in Legends of the Jews. Now, this is a fascinating story because this is going to pit the reptilian stories. We already saw it with St. George. We already saw that it was a reptilian that he actually slayed, that the dragon was within the human. And so all the artwork we see where he's actually spearing like a slithering, coiling, snake-like dragon is actually kind of more esoteric. They're showing you what's inside the actual human. But this is actually where we see it go down. So although Asmodeus was captured only for the purpose of getting the Shamir, we saw that in Testament of Solomon where he captured him. Solomon nevertheless kept him after the completion of the temple. So remember now he's using all these spirits to help him build it. One day the king told Asmodeus that he did not understand wherein the greatness of the demon lay, if their king could be kept in bonds by a mortal. Asmodeus replied that if Solomon were to remove his chains and lend him the magic ring, he would prove his own greatness. And Solomon agreed. It doesn't seem like Solomon is doing so well right here. The demon stood before him with one wing touching heaven and the other reaching to the earth. Snatching up Solomon, who had parted with his protecting ring, he flung him 400 parasangs away from Jerusalem and then palmed himself off as the king. So I want you to pay attention to what just happened here. Now, this is Legends of the Jews, okay? So you take this like everything else, the interviews and everything, with as many salt shakers as you want, okay? That I'm not sweating it, all right? To each his own. You guys all have to figure this out. But this is really interesting because they're telling you that there is a history of these demonic entities, these spiritual entities that can actually replace human kings. And in this case, he actually replaced Solomon and sat on the throne. And the catch here is that to everybody else, Asmodeus looked like Solomon. Nobody knew that he was fake Solomon. They all thought he was the legitimate Solomon. The real Solomon has now been disposed of the throne. He has been removed from the kingdom. And let's read on. Solomon is beggar. Banished from his home, deprived of his realm, Solomon wandered about in far-off lands among strangers, begging his daily bread. Nor did his humiliation end there. People thought him a lunatic because he never tired of assuring them that he was Solomon, Judah's great and mighty king. They're like, well, you're crazy because Solomon's on the throne. So who are you? Like, this is the dumbest thing ever. Naturally, that seemed a preposterous claim to the people. The lowest depth of despair he reached, however, when he met someone who recognized him. The recollections and associations that stirred within him then made his present misery almost unendurable. How much of this do I want to read? Let's see. Let's just jump ahead to this paragraph. For 3 long years, Solomon journeyed about, begging his way from city to city and from country to country, atoning for the 3 sins of his life by which he had set aside the commandment laid upon kings in Deuteronomy not to multiply horses and wives and silver and gold. Of course, with Solomon, when you get to the end of the Testament of Solomon, it's a tragic ending because he just starts lusting after. He can't get enough women, and he keeps bringing them in. There's this one woman in particular. He has to have her, and she's like, "No, you can't have me." And he's like, "No, I really want you." And he's like, she's like, "Okay, well, you got to worship my gods." And he actually ends up going in and making a sacrifice to her god. And at that time, all these spirits who he had control over, power over, then they got their revenge. They took him by force. And I will pause here and note that I don't know if that's simply, I don't know if that story really happened or if it's simply a metaphor. If it is a parable, I would say it's a very true parable, because we are commanded to put the commands on the doorposts of our house. We are commanded to keep the commands. And if we, I personally think that the putting the commands on the post aren't just there for us. It's actually there for the spirits. It's letting the spiritual world know that, like, this is the game we play. This is the law we abide under. And if they're going to intrude on your house, they know the consequence. Like, there's going to be serious consequences. Like, they can't do it. However, if you are an abomination and you are now committing abominable acts and breaking those commands, they're going to have a field day with you. All right. And that actually, I don't want to put fear in anybody. We only want to have the fear of Yah. But guys, we got to guard the commands. Obviously, Solomon didn't. Right. So this is where the spirits were like, all right, you're not keeping the commands anymore. You were keeping us, you had power over us before in your kingdom, but now it's our kingdom now. So anyways, that's how that happened. So anyways, the story ends that Solomon is able to go back to Jerusalem, I think after 3 years. And this is what it says right here. Asmodeus, who had been posing as King Solomon during the 3 years, Solomon, drove out and himself ascended the throne again. Now, why is this story familiar? This is what we started out with that novel from, like, was it a graphic novel or whatever? It was a pulp novel from the 1920s, Cole, where the guy, he's a barbarian in Atlantis, and he realizes that he's been replaced by reptilian, and he goes and kills him, and then he starts same thing, right? He's been replaced. It's right there. So we know that it does happen. Let's read this paragraph. Solomon succeeded in regaining his throne only after undergoing many hardships. The people of Jerusalem considered him a lunatic because he said that he was Solomon. After some time, the members of the Sanhedrin noticed his peculiar behavior, and they investigated the matter. They found that a long time had passed since Benaiah, the confidant of the king, had been permitted to enter the presence of the usurper. Furthermore, so this is kind of interesting because this sounds like what I'm about to tell you sounds like the interviews that David Icke would give with these different people who knew Diana and stuff like that, right? They're like, something is off about the royalty. So the wives of Solomon and his mother Bathsheba informed them that the behavior of the king had completely changed. This is the imposter king, the reptilian. It had completely changed. It was not befitting royalty and in no respect like Solomon's former manner. It was also very strange that the king never by any chance allowed his foot to be seen for fear, of course, of betraying his demonic origin. As soon as Asmodeus caught sight of the true king protected by his magic ring, he flew away. Solomon did not escape unscathed. The sight of Asmodeus and all his foreboding ugliness had so terrified him that henceforth he surrounded his couch at night with all the valiant heroes among the people. That comes from Legends of the Jews, Volume 4, I think Part 5 or whatever, Section 5. Legends of the Jews is a treasure trove. And again, even though whenever I read this and I'm like, okay, this is a bit much for me, but you line it up with this other stuff and it's like, this is amazing. This is like ancient stuff. And it's like, it's connecting with all the research. There's something to that. I could totally see that as a confession. All right, I'm probably going to end on this tonight. I could go on and on and on and on talking about it. Next week, I want to go specifically into the seraphim angels themselves. But we're going to end on an alien story. This is Herb Shermer, UFO Encounter, a detailed account. I'm taking this from the article or from the website Connect Paranormal blog. You can check it out. This was written by Jeff O'Connor not long ago, June 25th, 2024. Here's a picture of Herb Shermer, the police officer. It happened in the 1960s. Soon after, was it Barney and Betty Hill? A lot of these things started happening at this time. So Herb described an unusual event that happened early in the morning on December 3rd, 1967. It would change his life and make a significant contribution to UFO history. Police records supported his story, which he further explored while under hypnosis. Now, put a red flag on that right there. And I'll end kind of talking about hypnosis a little bit. Detailing encounters with aliens in a mysterious spaceship with advanced technology. And I hope all my listeners out there please, I am telling you, do not do hypnosis. Just don't do it. Like they can mess you up in hypnosis. They can really, really mess you up. We're talking like, MK Ultra stuff. So the abduction in Ashland, Nebraska, on the cold morning of December 3rd, 1967, a young police officer named Herb Shermer saw something that would change his life forever and started discussion about UFO sightings. What started out as a normal watch on a quiet night quickly turned into a strange and controversial event, leaving Shermer trying to figure out what was going on and leading him to look for answers in unusual ways. According to Clark, at around 2:30 a.m., he saw a strange object on the road ahead of him. The lights were flashing in the dark. At first, he thought it was a truck, so he turned on his highlights. He was shocked with when the object flew off into the night sky. Shermer later wrote in his police report, "I saw a flying saucer at the intersection of Highway 6 and 63. This was a short and confused account of the event. You won't believe it. I wonder if that's a play on 666 there, now that I'm looking at that, 6 and 63. This was a short and confused account of the event. You won't believe it. During the night, he had a terrible headache and a buzzing sound in his head that wouldn't go away. The next day, he found a red bump just below his left ear, which made the puzzle even more important. Shermer realized he had lost 20 minutes and was at loss for an explanation. Of course, this is, as you guys know, very common for UFO encounters, alien encounters. I brought on a woman last summer, and she claimed to be abducted, I think, over 200 times, including, I think she had like 3 different babies with them. It's a pretty tough interview to listen to, but I recommend everyone go back and check that out. She talked about missing time a lot too. Because of the strange events in time, he decided to seek help from Dr. Leo Sprinkle. Dr. Sprinkle, a Wyoming psychologist who specializes in hypnotic regression. Bullard noted that while he was under hypnosis, Schirmer started to remember bits and pieces of what had happened. He remembered that the car's radio and engine had crashed for no apparent reason. A white object emerged from the UFO and spoke to him mentally. I hear that a lot too. The people on board the ship claimed to be from another world, and their job was to stop people from destroying the Earth, blah, blah, blah. This is what I want you to see right here. There was a creature. Now, oddly enough, in this actual article, he doesn't describe him as a reptilian. And I was a little taken back by that because apparently this was one in the modern era. What made this UFO encounter so important is that it was one of the first reptilians that was reported. He just describes it here as a creature clad in overalls and adorned with a winged serpent, like kind of on his chest. He's adorned with a winged serpent. Remember when I told you to starting out the Order of the Dragon to show that the earliest artwork we have of them, and they had something similar to that. So, add that to the pile up of info. Emerged from the ship and directed a greenish gas towards his vehicle. After that, a bright light flashed and Schirmer passed out. Now, I'm just going to end on this here, talking about the analysis of being hypnotized. A Harvard doctor named Dr. John E. Mack, who studied UFO abductions, is one of the experts who have looked into these cases. And Max said that these experiences might be a new kind of world that science doesn't fully understand yet. However, Spanos argues, wait, who is Spanos? Maybe I skipped that part. Whatever. This other dude argues, I agree with him, that hypnotic regression can lead to confabulation, a phenomenon where an individual fabricates real memories under suggestion. So that's just, take that with a grain of salt. But it is interesting that he did claim to see a reptilian type creature manifest, and after this event, more and more people started seeing reptilians. Now, the reason why I'm reading you this is next week when we start looking at biblical examples and extra biblical book examples of the seraphim and the dragons. I'm going to be starting out. Kind of branching off this and showing how our mind, the left and the right side of our brains, work in perceiving these entities before us, and why I think we see them as we do. When I was, I think, I would have been, 15. When I was 15 years old, I actually encountered a reptilian. I don't talk about that much. It was in a, it was a sleep paralysis moment. He entered my room. I wasn't able to move. He spoke to me. He spoke in tongues, by the way, the babbling. He spoke in tongues, and I was able to interpret it. And he just evil entity. And it terrified me so much. I never confessed to it. People were asking me what was happening, what was the problem. I had teachers taking me aside, and I would be shivering. It was a very, very terrifying event. And I didn't know what to make of this. It was probably about 25 years later or something like that. I'm in my 30s now. I've woken up and I'm researching all this stuff. And I finally looked into the reptilians. I'm like, oh my goodness. I saw a sketch of a reptilian. I'm like, that's exactly what I saw. I saw that. So nobody had to feed me that. There was nothing where, there was no suggestion. I was never hypnotized afterwards, anything like that. And so, I think that these do exist. I do believe I've seen one. I won't tell you what his message was. It was a lot of 4-letter words and just nasty stuff. He didn't like me very much. Kind of like a lot of the internet people out there. Same stuff. I'm going to end there tonight, and hope you guys enjoyed this. Sorry, I feel a little choppy in the beginning. My presentation was kind of all over the place. It happens sometimes. I have to warm up. And if I could do it again right now, I'd go back and it would probably be really awesome. But anyways, we'll do this again next week. Good night, everybody. Have a great restful Sabbath.
if you had the power to go back in time and choose to give into a ministry that would effectively change the way the world sees an idea, would you do it? I think the answer is yes. Well, you don't have to go back in time. What you can do is right now, you can click the link below and give to the Paleo-Hebrew translation effort. What is this? Well, Paleo-Hebrew is the ancient form of Hebrew. When you write Hebrew out, you build it. If I said H2O, you know that I mean water. That's what building a language is. Japanese, Chinese, Korean, they all have this idea, even Paleo Babylonian, the Paleo Egyptian, the hieroglyphics, petroglyphs. They have this idea that when you put a certain group of pictures together, it means a word. That's what Paleo Hebrew was. That's what Paleo Hebrew is. Pamela Glasgow is changing the way that we view the scriptures. You can help. You can go ahead and click the link below and find out how you can change your life, your study of the Bible, your children's life, your children's children, and everybody who, the whole world, man, the whole world can benefit greatly from this. And you can have the power to help right now. All you got to do is click it and give. And it's good to give. What does the Bible say? James says, what is good religion? That I defile not myself with the world, then I give to the widows and the orphans. Well, we're working on number one. Sorry, number two. Well, both, actually. We're working on not defiling ourselves, so hopefully you're working on that too. I'm working on that. But we can give to the widows. And the widows, she's right there. And she's doing a work for you, for us, for the whole world. And we have the power to effectively change the paradigm of how we've seen the scriptures from time immemorial to tomorrow. So do that. All right, be blessed and not stressed.